Hello and welcome to Pop of Passion. Join me, Jax Barker, comedian and highly sensitive person, along with a guest every other week as we delve into our deepest passions, from being a plant dad to conquering insecurity with comedy. If you relish the memory of an unexpected late-night conversation with a stranger about their obscure passion, the kind where you have tears in your eyes one second and are doubled over laughing the next, this is the podcast for you. Welcome to Pop of Passion. I would like to welcome my guest today, who has rang an alarm clock in an orchestra. He is known as the Beatles expert, Professor Moptop, on Chicago's WXRT FM 93.1. That's 93.1, folks. He has written the first textbook in what he hopes will be a compilation of Beatles history. He has been featured with host Terry Hemmeret on the station Breakfast with the Beatles Sunday morning since the early 2000s. Please welcome to Pop of Passion, Gregory Alexander.
Is this where the studio audience comes in?
I'm clapping on the inside.
Clapping on the inside. I like that. Huh? Welcome. It's so nice to be the inaugural guest.
Well, it couldn't have been anyone else because I feel like this has been in the making for many years. From stacking bananas, having you building me up, to now I took the plunge and we're here.
Also, Bruce Springsteen was busy.
Oh, okay. I think he's in the bad books as of late, is what I've heard.
Bruce is?
I think he drove under the influence.
I think he got out of that. I'm more curious about what kind of cop in New Jersey busts Springsteen.
Yeah.
No, he has a podcast with Barack Obama now. Yeah.
Well,
I'm kind of curious to be on that. If they ask me, I'll go.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Barack, the boss, if you're listening, please contact Gregory Alexander. His contact information will be in the show notes.
All right.
So, Gregory, my question for you today is very simple. What is your passion?
My passion is knowledge, and I know that sounds kind of corny, but I just love learning and discovering new things. And when I say new things, obviously it's not things that are brand new, because most of the new things that I learn are things from 50, 60, 70, 80 years ago. So my passion is discovering new things, quote unquote, new.
That's very interesting. So how did you come to discover that that was your passion?
Someone asked me on a podcast.
Okay.
No, after a long time of trying to figure out what I wanted to be when I grew up, and I decided to get into radio initially, one of the things that I really did well on was what was called show prep. Now, before the days of the internet, you would get faxes, you would have piles of magazines, you would circle items, you would cut out things from the newspaper, and you would just have them in a big pile, and then when it was time for something to talk about, you would pick from the pile. Now it's very different, you just Google it. But we would pick from the pile, and it would be, hey, let's talk about this woman who has a fear of pickles, or something along those lines. And from that, I started trying to find more and more unusual and unique things. The things that other people just not necessarily didn't know, but very few people knew. And it's always fun then to find out some people also knew these strange, unusual facts. And it's, hey, we have something in common. We have a bond of whatever unusual passion it might be, whatever fact or strange statistic or bizarre thing that happened in history.
Absolutely.
And I've always been a tremendous music fan. And there's a lot of facts to know about a lot of different bands. Every single band has lineup changes and siblings and girlfriends and wives and stories and tales and heartaches and, tragedies in their lives. And I just, I really enjoy getting into a single topic and really focusing on it and learning as much as I can about it. Not everything, because I'll never know everything, even though that's my goal.
Yep.
Until then, I'm just going to pretend like I know everything. But having having the internet at your fingertips is, a blessing and a curse, because now I could really, really delve and search into something and say, like a musical artist, like say Stevie Wonder. I spent a lot of time listening to his stuff again and again, reading. And not that I got bored with it or was over it. I took a break for a while and listened to other stuff, and then continuously and quite often revisit his music. And all the while I'm listening, reading this, finding out about that, what did he do on this date and this important event in his life and so on. And eventually you learn a tremendous amount about a single topic. The downside of this is there's plenty of other topics that I don't know anything about because I'm spending so much time listening to a certain artist.
Absolutely. So when you have this search for knowledge and it's your passion, would you say it's a feeling or is it a emotion? How do you process that? How does it fill you?
That's an interesting question, because although it does bring joy and a little bit of, money, it also brings frustration and self-doubt. I've written 2 books on the Beatles. It's textbook Beatles Volume 1 and 2, and I've been working on Volume 3 currently, and these take a long time to do. There's a lot of steps to it. I self-publish, so it's all me. People who help with, the design of the book, the cover, and the editing, they don't come until later. So basically, there's nothing they can do now other than help and encourage me. But for right now, it's just a matter of trying to get through that creative process. And I have to really, really push myself really, really hard, because it takes a while to get it done right. And I get distracted easily. There's plenty of other things to do, like listen to same Stevie Wonder album 50 times and read about it again. But there is ultimately a great joy in it. There's a sense of satisfaction when your product is finally done. I remember seeing the book and holding it for the first time, and it was like, wow, it was, a little bit surprising, a little startling. And you thumb through it and you read something and you say, hey, I remember writing that. Personally, I would be much better by remembering a lot of these things, or these positive things, instead of dwelling on, oh man, it's been a week and I've barely written anything. And, I keep writing this one part again and again and again, and it's just not making sense to me. And instead of dwelling on the negatives, I should focus on the positives.
I think that's great advice for every single human I've ever interacted with.
Okay. All of them?
Well, I don't consider narcissists humans. So there's that. But I completely agree. And it's something I'm working on every day, is take your wins, because they don't come every day. They
don't, yes. There's certain events that I try to focus and remember on. One time while speaking at a library, there was a guy, he was very, very excited to meet Professor Mountop, and he loved sharing stories with me about, I saw the Beatles and Ed Sullivan and blah, 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 and I was so heartbroken when the Beatles broke up, and telling these great stories. And you could just see he had a really enthusiasm for the Beatles, as well as all the things I had taught him, because he knew quite a bit, but he had also learned a lot more from listening to the weekly audio reports I would give on the Beatles. And my editor, Laura, was there, and she took a picture of me and this guy, and he didn't really have technology, and she printed out a picture and she mailed it to this guy after getting his address. And I think of that frequently when I'm like,
yes,
because that's a good, positive moment. She reminds me to think of joy, to think of the gift that this guy, received.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I wonder all the time. I think about passion a lot because spoiler alert, folks, my passion is passion. And I think about the ways we forge connections through passion. And I think that so many friendships are based on shared passion. And I love picking up a new passion. Like, I like to steal my friends' passions in a nice way.
Example.
All my friends in high school were very into Harry Potter. I had never read Harry Potter because my mom tried reading it to me when I was in second grade. And she, you know, God love her, but she is not the best reader when the names are Hermione and Dudley and Dobby. And so she would go and turn Hermione into Brittany one night, and then the next night she would forget it was Brittany, and she would say Jenny. And I thought this story didn't make any sense.
Can you imagine if she directed the film?
Well, some people would say she might as well have, you know, some of them. Shout out to Christopher Columbus. So, I was in high school and all my friends were obsessed with Harry Potter, and I was like, you know what? I love reading and I have some free time. I have recently, you know, I got accepted to college in like December, so I was like peaced out. And I started reading Harry Potter because my friends were so obsessed. And that summer, my friends and I went to the Wizarding World of Harry Potter, which had just opened in Florida. That was all of our graduation gifts from our parents. And that trip like solidified, there were 6 of us, and it solidified those friendships, and those are lifelong friendships based on me stealing their passion.
Borrowing. Sharing.
Yeah. And now it's become absolutely singular to me in that it's mine. All the horrible J.K. Rowling issues aside, Harry Potter meant a lot to me, and I believe in my heart that books and media come to you when you need them. And I experienced my first heartbreak right as I was finishing the final book. And I, like, romantic heartbreak. And I absolutely found comfort in Harry Potter, a story about a young boy who succeeded and was different. And it was so, like, it was just perfect timing. And there have been so many moments like that where something will come to you and it's like the timing is just right.
It is remarkable how events like that line up and there's no answer for it.
Yeah.
In the introduction, you had said about me ringing an alarm clock with an orchestra,
Yes.
which was quite a thrill. And earlier that day, I went to a funeral for a very good friend. And it was very bizarre. And that's the same day, I had a funeral in the morning. And then in the evening, I did this incredibly fun thing, which, you know, gave me joy. It's very, very unusual how things balance out. I wish there was more control we had over it.
Right. I think there's something to say for having faith in the ups and downs, in the waves of life. Because even when you're in your darkest moment, you have to remember, I've had great times. And then when you're in your greatest times, you have to remember, like, I have had horrible times and been really hurt. And it all comes together and it's all part of the journey.
It's another thing that it's so much easier to say when you're thinking about it from the outside, that you have to remind yourself about the other part during both situations.
Definitely. And I find the best way to do that is by reaching out to friends who will remind you, because it's so hard to be your own best friend. But if you have a couple good friends, one of them is going to remind you and tell you what you need to hear at the right time. And from there, you can accept it, because it's easier to accept advice from someone that isn't inside your own head, which is, I feel, is unstable for me.
It must be sad to be surrounded by sycophants who just love you for no matter what you do, who are insincere.
Right.
I would so much rather have you look like shit today than
Absolutely.
you look wonderful, which nobody ever tells me I look wonderful.
Gregory, I can't believe you're calling me out, because you're obviously including me in the everyone.
It's also the way I dress. There's a lot to be said about that, which is nothing to be said about the way I dress.
Well, it's interesting you bring up clothing. I created my own concentration in college that was called Fashioning and Identity in the Culture of Clothing,
Okay.
Because at 19, I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I had this wonderful opportunity that my school offered a program where you could create your own major. And don't get me wrong, it wasn't like, yeah, write a paper and then you graduate. It was a lot of hard work, but I found that every class I took about, anthropology or the classics or Taoism, I would find something about clothing or fashioning an identity within the text. And that was a huge moment for me to be like, I'm making connections here, which is what I think the world runs on.
Such as the individuality of, say, Indians and their paint and the feathers in their hair and stuff like that.
Sure.
All right.
Like, one thing I've always been interested in politics, being a little Irish Catholic girl growing up in Chicago, because I always...
Well, what young kid doesn't love Reaganomics?
Well, that plus all these Irish rebel songs that I grew up listening to that I didn't realize were rebel songs. I just thought they were songs.
They kind of sound like college fight songs until you learn more about them.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then you find out they're talking about turning the tyranny of the government over. And
yes.
It's not as fun, is it?
No, it's not as fun.
Could be fun.
Well, it depends how you look at it. Because I found a lot of solace in my Irish identity at that time. And I basically turned into this anti-British lady. Anti-imperialism, all of that. And it's really interesting because...
you were Megan before Megan. Is that her name?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
I always say that I was Megan before Megan.
I've heard that.
Yeah. That's probably where you got that.
Maybe. Well, Springsteen told me.
Okay. So...
He texts all the time.
I can't imagine him having an iPhone.
That's a good call. He might. I don't know. That's a very good something. I'm going to check into that.
Please do.
I'll get back to you on that. And you know I will.
Yeah, absolutely. So I learned that Gandhi went to school to be a barrister, an attorney, a lawyer in England, and wore suits. When he returned to his native India, he wore a loincloth famously. As a means of political protest in order to make a comment on basically British imperial rule. And I was like, okay, things are coming together because we're talking about clothes. And there's so many, Shakespeare books where people will cross-dress in order to make their way through the forest safely, say a woman, as you like it. Great Expectations, Miss Havisham, she gets left at the altar and she never takes off her wedding dress and it turns yellow and she only wears one shoe. And I think that says a lot about, I know in moments of my life of deep depression, I have not showered for probably 2 weeks.
Could happen.
Yeah. And worn the same clothes. And then I also find great power in choosing an outfit. But that's my thing. But it is a human experience. There's a scientific study done by Northwestern that was called Enclothed Cognition, in which there was a study where basically they held up a lab jacket, or it's just a white jacket, and they told the people who were being studied, this is a doctor's coat. They told and then they would tell them, this is an artist's cloak or a painter's vest. It's the same piece of fabric, but the way people performed on standardized tests and other types of tests varied based on the clothing. So there's science to the fact that how we dress affects our mood and how we perform.
I can understand that. I'm always been a jeans and t-shirt guy, never much more. other than weddings and wakes when I wear, a okay suit. But I feel most comfortable when I'm just wearing a rock t-shirt with jeans with holes in them,
Absolutely.
like my Ramones shirt.
Yeah.
And I know it's just a garment, but
no, there's something to
it.
it.
A little bit of comfort in it. It's like a nice blanket.
Absolutely.
And it's got the logo on it.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I like that you say you're a jeans and t-shirt guy because I was having a conversation with my cousin this morning. We were on a walk and I asked him, what's your go-to outfit? Like, say you were on a fashion magazine and you get to dress yourself. What would you wear? And he had an answer. And it was a jokey answer, but it was still an answer. And I've always said, whenever I ask myself questions when I'm bored, that I would absolutely wear a pair of tailored jeans that I've never owned tailored jeans, but that fit really nice.
Mm-hmm.
Like a little high-waisted, black V-neck, short-sleeved, and some black pumps and a Chanel jacket, like a tweed, a pop of color, or maybe an off-white.
See, I would probably go for my Ramones shirt.
Everyone has that outfit that makes you feel a certain way. And I think that says a lot about us, and just as our passions say a lot about us.
There was a friend of a friend who was getting married, and I have officiated weddings in the past, and someone said, oh, he does that. And she said, hey, would you like to do that? And I kind of jokingly said, yeah, but I get to wear my Ramones shirt. And she said, oh, okay, that'd be great. And I did. And when the wedding itself happened, it was only her and her now husband and his parents, and that was all that was there. And I wore my Ramones shirt with a jacket, and it looked very nice, and they had a wonderful time, and we had a wonderful day, and that's now a bond that we have as well, like you were saying before.
Yeah.
That's very interesting about the power of a garment.
Right. It seems trivial, and I know people think fashion is a silly girl thing, which don't even get me started, but there's power to what we give power to.
Like my Magic Cubs hat.
Absolutely, your Magic Cubs hat.
That's why they won.
Yeah.
They could say hitting and making the right choices at the right time, but ultimately it was my Magic Cubs hat.
Yes.
Yeah.
I went to bed that night.
I know you went to bed that night.
Yeah. And was it 4 days later Donald Trump got elected?
It was that same week. I think it was a week or two after.
It was less than a... Yeah.
Yeah.
It was in under 7 days.
Speaking of high peaks and low valleys.
I
imagine being a left-wing Cleveland Indian fan. That must have been a terrible time. Because at least we had the Cubs won. We still felt good. We had a nice parade. Imagine having that.
That was such a moment in history. And I'm not even I'm not a sports girl. But that was a moment. I cried about it. I know I cry about everything. But I was so emotional. And I just love Chicago. And it was so exciting. And
it was fun, positive, and very unique. I mean, There's been parades in the city, but there's never been a parade of that magnitude. I forget the specific statistic, but I think it was in the top 10 of the most widely attended events in history.
Wow.
A couple of them being Pope visits and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah. It's those moments.
I think Rod Stewart was on that list too, believe it or not.
Well, I'm not surprised.
I think he was.
Yeah. With hair like that. I remember that was such a weird time in history, and I found myself sinking into such a deep depression after the election that up until 2 years in, I didn't watch any television that I had not already seen. And I love TV. That was definitely one of my passions growing up. And I reverted into a place where I could not do anything but watch comfort shows. So I only watched Gilmore Girls, Parks and Recreation, The Office, and Friends.
Which doesn't sound like a terrible day anyway, but
no,
there is a bit of trying to avoid the news while also being responsible and aware. And it was really difficult to do it's been very, very difficult to do over the last 4 years, specifically difficult over the last year.
Yes. Do you have any comfort TV shows? I know you have comfort music.
I mostly stick to comfort music. I love the show Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
Oh, very cool.
One of my old favorite shows was Homicide. And Andre Braugher that's the show that all the SVUs and all the Law and Order spun off of.
Okay.
And Richard Belzer's on it, and it's great. And I remember watching it at a time when I didn't have a lot of money, so I wasn't going out a lot, and it was on late at night, and I was working early in the morning, so I would set the timer on the videotape.
Yeah.
And when I'd come home the next day after work, I'd sit and watch Homicide on the VCR. Andre Braugher is on that, and he's a really excellent, very dark actor. He plays a really good, serious character on that show. And he's also a cop on Brooklyn Nine-Nine. And he's hysterical. It's very unusual. And I, for whatever reason, I never really got Andy Samberg.
Yeah.
Well, I thought he was funny, but I have come to really, really appreciate him. And at night when I can't sleep, I watch that quite a bit, and it's just fun. It's just, they're never too serious for too long. They're all goofy. I like all the characters, and it's comforting. Frasier is a similar show to that for me, and it's on all the time, so that helps.
Yeah, that's definitely helpful. I find the dichotomy between like a serious moment and then laughter to be my favorite emotion, where I remember there was a cancer scare in my family for one of my cousins, and I went to my grandparents' house randomly, but I don't think it was random. I think it was meant to be. And I remember I walked in the door. We had just gotten the news, and I went up to my grandma, and we're both crying, and she has very dry hands, so she always has lotion, and then she put these cotton gloves on her hands, and she hugged me, and then we're crying, hugging, and it's like a sad moment because we don't know what's going to happen. Then she cracks a joke about how her hands are gross and she is going to get lotion all over me. And it was like to laugh while you still have tears in your eyes, and to be able to realize that life can do that so fast.
There's a very good friend of mine named Keith, who I also whenever I need a laugh, he's the guy to call. And we chit-chat. And we have so many inside jokes, and no one else thinks we're funny other than him and I. We think we're hysterical. We think we're the best comedy team ever. And whenever I need a good laugh, I call and talk to Keith. There was a friend of mine. He had committed suicide a couple years ago. And I felt very bad about this. And my friend Bruce, who had passed away, who killed himself, he also was very, very... loved the joke that you're not supposed to say. He would love to make the joke with me and say the words that you're not supposed to say, and we always loved it. And a friend called, and he said that bad news, and Bruce died, and he had just been weird, and we had talked, and we had said, I didn't know about this, and went back and forth. And he said even the last time that he was here by the pool, he didn't seem like he was having much fun. And it was at that moment that I realized that his cousin had a swimming pool. And I talked to Keith and told him all about this, and said what I wanted to say to Don was, "Why, you guys have a swimming pool?" But I knew I couldn't, and I knew deep down that Bruce would really enjoy that. He would really laugh about that. Yes. Keith laughed about it. We had a good laugh over it. And I made Keith promise that at my wake or funeral that he's going to instantly start talking shit about me at the funeral. So people will be laughing and having fun. My wake's going to be great.
Yes.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's very Irish of you.
Is it?
Irish people love to get, a couple bottles of whiskey on the table, crack jokes, tell stories, and just have like a celebration.
I kind of like that.
And yeah, I think it's very Irish to find joy in the sorrow because you have no other choice. Like being oppressed for as many communities have for hundreds or thousands of years, it's a resilience. And I think it's interesting that you bring up, this like the high and the low, because that's what it's like all about. I remember when we were together and I got news that my great uncle had passed, and I was very, I couldn't do anything. And you didn't say, maybe you did, but I don't remember you saying my condolences. You said, what did you love about him?
I asked you to tell me something good about him who died.
And I did. And now every time someone has passed, or in my life or in a friend's life, I do the same thing. And it's like a life lesson that I've carried. And I have taught people this life lesson that you taught me. And you don't know these people. And now it's like this chain of events. But that was because it was such a sad moment. And you said, like, tell me a fun story.
I appreciate you remembering that.
Well, I think about it every time someone dies. So thank you for that.
You're very welcome. The good times and the bad times. Another friend of mine, Patrick, who actually you once recorded a Feel Better Patrick, Things Are Great message. And I edited it together and shipped it off to him. Him and I talk about tacos and Willie Nelson, that they're there for the good times and the bad times. And if you're, having a great time, you can listen to Willie and eat tacos. Or if you're very sad and depressed, you can listen to Willie and eat tacos.
Yes.
Willie Nelson and tacos. If you take nothing else back, you can take that.
I like that.
I imagine Willie would too.
I can't imagine there's much he wouldn't be supportive of that wasn't hurting another person or being. Like, he just seems ethereal. He's sort of like Dolly Parton.
He seems
there's only
like,
a few of them.
Yeah, he seems like the real deal. That's what the real deal. The people who aren't just acting like they're pleasant and wonderful and nice. I think he's the real deal.
Yeah, I think that is the most, like the highest value in my life is like people being genuine.
It's got to be very difficult in the entertainment world too, because that's not really a way to win in the entertainment world.
No.
You're probably much better off, not caring about the person that you're stepping on their back,
Yeah, for sure. But then you see people like Dolly and Willie Nelson who have succeeded, and I think it's possible, but it's almost like it's like godly, like it was ordained, because we need those people to balance out the horrible people.
It's remarkable how long careers are at this point.
Yeah.
A lot of the rock and roll I listen to is, 60s rock and roll. These guys were young men when they were writing it, and they figured when they were 30 or 40 at the latest, they would be old news. Well, the Rolling Stones and the Who are still together, and these guys are still performing stuff. It's very interesting to listen to their viewpoints from different points of their lives. Yeah. Specifically when they thought, we have a 10-year career and that's it.
Yeah.
And then it's interesting to think of what's going to happen in, say, 50 years from now. Will Kid Cudi be, will he still be relevant, and will people be talking about how he's, given me so much joy over over my life? It's hard to say.
Yeah. I think those timeless performers are so untouchable, and obviously not everyone can be that, because otherwise it wouldn't be special.
Exactly, yeah.
So if you had to pick your one timeless artist, and you can say the Beatles, obviously, I'm just wondering, who would that be to you?
It would be Bob Dylan.
Okay.
As much as I love the Beatles and always have, when I was first really getting interested in music and noticing that, things could be more than just fun, catchy songs, and paying attention to lyrics, and this is me being, 8, 9 years old, I noticed Bob Dylan, and I think, wow, he's just not singing about, Baby I Love You. He's singing about, heartbreak, and he's singing these, unusual words. And then I'd heard like a Rolling Stone, and he had a brand new song called Joker Man, which is sort of about the fall of Jesus. It's kind of hard to say. It's very Bob Dylan.
Yeah.
And this is when I was 9, 10 years old, and it was just, I didn't realize at the time, obviously, of just how remarkably influential it was for the rest of my life. And everything I do, he's been around at some point or another.
Yeah, it's really interesting to grow with an artist.
Especially someone like him who continues to evolve and change, and he's done things that he's never done before, even in the last 5, 10 years. And Yeah. It's something else. I've seen him in concert, countless times now, and it's amazing how it feels when you're there.
Yeah. I am not a go to every concert kind of gal, even if I had the money, because I have generalized anxiety disorder. Thank you very much. But also, crowds freak me out. It's just like the parking, it just is a stressful, but I will see Lady Gaga every time she's in town, and I've traveled to see her, and it's because who she is.
She brings that joy to you.
Yeah. It's so like, there are moments that you can touch that because she was there.
Sometimes I'll hear a song. Sometimes I'll hear an actual recording of a concert that I had been to, and you immediately remember something. There was the Dead and Company. They'd played Wrigley Field a few years back.
Yeah.
And they have a song called Tennessee Jed. And every time I hear the guitar intro, I remember specifically looking at my friend Rich, and we just both had the biggest bright smile because, oh, wow, they're going to do Tennessee Jed now.
Yep.
Yep. And it's you can't plan it.
Nope.
It just happens.
Yeah, synchronicity.
Yes.
That's been happening a lot lately. I feel like just things are adding up in a way that I'm noticing. They may have been adding up before I started noticing, but it doesn't count if you don't notice.
That's very interesting.
So I try to notice, and I try to keep track of things. And when things come in certain numbers, or I see a cardinal, there's certain things. And like just recently, I don't know if it's pandemic fatigue or what, but things are happening, and it's very cool and like life affirming.
Well, I'm not as positive as I would like to be. I don't know if anyone really is.
Mm-hmm.
I hope that after this pandemic finally goes away, after it's the time of, wow, do you remember when we used to have to wear masks? Wow, remember that? Hey, we were at a baseball game and everyone's sitting normal. Remember when we couldn't sit and we had to have rows in between us? That'll be a new understanding and a new care for one another.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily believe myself when I say this because I don't know if it's going to happen. I don't really think it's going to happen, but I really, really want it to happen. I really hope that there's some sort of a silver lining benefit after all of this after all of these sacrifices we've made, after all these things that we, couldn't do that we used to be able to do. Not to mention all the people, have had much worse off than not being able to go to a concert or a jazz bar.
Right.
Losing jobs and houses. That's obviously more important. But I certainly hope that at the end of all this, we as a people, as Americans, as humans, get a little bit more compassionate as opposed to less compassionate, which feels like the trend.
Well, I think that's a wonderful place to end this portion, because that was beautiful, and I don't think you meant to be so profound, but I'm going to be thinking about that. And when I first asked you to do the podcast, I assumed your passion would be kindness. And I think it's interesting how all our passions come together to form you can call it a soul or whatever you call it. But I think the way that you take your knowledge and spread kindness through knowledge is a great trait that is very Gregory.
Oh, I appreciate that. It's Gregorian.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
So I have a fun question.
Is this the lightning round?
This is lightning round. So what's your favorite pop?
Iggy Pop.
That is a great answer. I meant like Chicago style, like a soda.
Oh, I like Pepsi. Cold Pepsi in a can. I drink way too much Pepsi in a can. I love it. I know it's not good for you.
No.
It's so delicious.
But that's why it is good.
I know. That's why it is. I probably should have said Pop Staples, too. I feel kind of bad for Pop Staples.
Oh, my gosh.
That's how my mind thinks.
Yeah.
It goes through rock and roll before getting anywhere else.
Well, no, and that's like a great part of you, and that's why you're interesting, because these things come out of your mouth, and you're brave enough to let them come out of your mouth, whereas a lot of people have this, like, filter that isn't serving them.
It's not necessary all the time.
Yeah. I started drinking Dr. Pepper like first thing in the morning. First because I found that it helped with a hangover, and then I just really liked it. So Dr. Pepper in a bottle is my go-to.
Plastic or glass?
Plastic.
Because those glass bottles with Pepsi are also very good.
I've never had Dr. Pepper out of a glass bottle, but if anyone wants to send one to me, my information is in the show notes.
I don't know if they're as rare as you think.
I've never seen one.
Maybe you should look. You are a pepper. Do you know of that? The I'm a pepper, you're a pepper commercial?
I feel like that is ringing a bell from like the VH1. I love the probably 70s or 80s. Yes.
And there was a catchy jingle about wouldn't you like to be a pepper too?
I would love to be a pepper.
You are a pepper, apparently.
Guess so. So, in physics, the sixth derivative of position is known as pop. What did you want to be when you were 6?
I wanted to be a baseball player, which is really dumb when you think about it, when the type of athletic baseball playing kid I was at 6 years old.
You know what? It's fine. If we were all good at baseball, it wouldn't be special and no one would be into baseball. It would be like...
Or everyone would have their own team. If we were all good at it, it'd be great. It'd be like
true.
9 games a day. I can go for that.
Yeah.
I also wanted to, when I was very, very young, I wanted to be an astronaut, but that quickly passed. I don't know why. That was like a
blip on the radar.
It was like a month that I was like all about space. And then I was like,
That reminds me of my favorite quote from Mad Men, which I'm going to butcher. It's about the...
Is it the one about him getting high and listening to Miles Davis?
No.
Oh, okay. That was just a guess.
It's about they're eulogizing a team member, this woman, and they say she was born in 18 blah 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 on a dirt road on a farm, and she died on the 37th floor of a skyscraper. I'm gonna cry. She was an astronaut. Like, what were they writing? Like, that is so cool that someone wrote that, and I butchered it. But you guys can look it up.
You probably got the sentiment, right? I wonder when they write these shows how long they spend writing specific things like that. And is it just come to them, bam, that's it. Hey, let's write that down. Yeah, that's really good. Or do they labor over it and they change words and it says, no, maybe not the 37th floor or the 40th floor. No,
right.
Yeah.
Well, you're a writer. I, dabble in the comedy world, and I find that my favorite joke from my second Type 5 was from a class, and the teacher told us don't do online dating jokes because everyone's doing them. And so naturally I wrote an online dating joke and said, I was in a relationship at the time, and I said, I don't have a Tinder bio, but I spend a lot of time thinking about my Tinder bio for someone who's in a long-term relationship. I've decided mine would be, some people may say I'm plus size, but I'm just unwilling to downsize. Pause for laughter. That may also just be my Real Housewives tagline.
Would work for both, wouldn't it?
And that was my teacher's favorite joke.
All right.
And I was kind of like, you told us we couldn't do dating jokes.
Gotcha.
And I think, but it wasn't like a spiteful thing. It was literally just, it came to me and I didn't labor over it. And then I love outside validation, and it fed me.
You know what quickly came to me was the Professor Mop Top moniker. I was a long-haired man for most of my, adult life.
Yeah.
And it was one of the years that I was working at XRT on an annual Rampant Beatlemania Sunday day. And Terry Hemmert, who was the host, said, hey, we should have you, blah, blah, do this. And we said, hey, why don't I make it like a college class, and I'll teach, second level, really deep Beatles stuff. Yeah, that's a great idea. Hey, what can we call you? And I said, just like that, how about Professor Mop Top? And it just stuck that instantly.
Yep.
We didn't have a list of,
No.
The other one was going to be Dr. Hair, but that didn't fly.
I think some things come up in labs, and we have these tweets that are written by 12 comedy writers, but then some kid in Iowa says something, and it like lights the nation on fire. I think sometimes it's lightning in a bottle, and sometimes things are formulaic, but I appreciate the lightning in a bottle method.
It seems like the instant spontaneity is the better choice. It seems like that gives better results.
Yeah, I think so. So my last question, it's not like as fun. Pop is an informal term for a father or occasionally a grandfather. What's the best lesson you've ever learned from one of your parents?
Probably the value of hard work and being responsible with your job.
I like that.
Interesting that grandfather in Greek is papu.
Oh.
So my grandfather was Papu Greg, my namesake.
Aww.
But then that was my father's father, and he was a milkman, very hard worker.
Yeah.
He was the last of the milkmen that would come day to day and put milk and cheese and eggs at your door. My grandfather on my mother's side was always Puli, because my sister, when she was first learning to talk, wasn't quite able to say Papu and would say Puli, and it just stuck.
Yeah.
Also a very hard worker. And my father as well, who's just dead. Although my sister and I call him Mike. We always have.
That's so funny.
My cousin Angie used to say, "Hey, Nick and Joe," to her parents. And as young kids, we thought it was so funny. She's calling her parents by their first name. I wonder what Mike thinks of that, huh? And we always have.
Classic comedy.
Classic comedy.
Yeah. So I will give you one more to end on a fun note. There is a railway station in York, England called Poppleton Railway Station, otherwise known as Pop. If you could take a train ride anywhere in the universe or your imagination, that was a 1-hour train ride, where would you go?
Oh, a 1-hour train ride. What I would like to do, although this doesn't really answer the question, is get on a train and go from one end of the country to the other and then back again. That would probably take longer than an hour.
You know what? It's your choose your own adventure.
I would like to take a lengthy train ride all around the United States. I'm sure I could learn plenty of other things in other countries and other continents as well.
Yeah.
But there's so much of America that I haven't seen. I would love to spend a lengthy amount of time in a train, get off, spend a day, wait for the next train.
Well, we're going to get Mayor Pete right on that.
Maybe he could bring back like hobos who would travel with their, the stick and all their clothings in a bag.
Bringing it back to Mad Men.
I could do that and then ride the rails.
Absolutely. So this is the point of the show where I am going to ask you for a passion that you want to share with the audience that doesn't totally have to benefit you, but will benefit the world in some way.
Whenever I often do classes on the Beatles, and, I always talk about how it's so nice to have an escape from all the bad and heavy, horrible things that happen in the world. And the Beatles seem to really be a great source of escape, and a lot of positivity is brought through them for a lot of people for a lot of years. Now, There's people that are several generations, and there's, people that are talking to their great grandkids talking about, and then I saw the Beatles and things like that. When I talk about these classes, a lot of people want to be able to take some of this home, and obviously I can't go to everyone's house and do it. And when they see my books, they have they light up like, oh wow, I could spend more time on this. Because also, if I'm talking about, say I'm talking about a song that they covered in this year, I'll play a different version of it and a original version of it. And this was in this 1957 happened this, and sometimes I go kind of fast. It's hard to retain all these facts about the Marvelettes or this Motown song or Smokey Robinson or whoever it is. And when they see, oh, wow, there's a book that you can buy, they seem to get really excited because then they could go home on their own time. They could read through it and they could say, oh, Hold Me Tight. I never knew much about that. I'll read on that. Hey, now I'll play that song. And that's a positive charge. That makes me feel good that something that I created, people are able to take home. When I was doing the weekly show, it would every week I would be doing a different song. And there was a good friend of mine who was a drummer who played in churches on Sunday mornings. And a couple of times he was late because he was sitting in the car waiting to hear me, which was a really nice compliment.
Yep. There's something about making someone else feel something.
You had talked before about connections, and a lot of people have a connection surrounding the Beatles. And there's also people, Rolling Stones fans, and Deadheads are a really big example of that.
But Little Monsters, Barbs.
Yep, there's all kinds of things. There's the Kiss Army. I'm just talking about music. There could be people who bond over a movie. They see this and say, Star Wars is a great example, or Star Trek, or any of the other Star movies. There's probably other Star movies.
Spaceballs?
Maybe. Oh, that's another thing. Yeah, Mel Brooks movies.
Yeah.
People will bond over that. And having these things to escape to is really important. That's a good charge. That's a good feeling to be able to relax. We don't relax as a society.
No, that Protestant work ethic really has gotten the best of us. I wasn't planning on sharing this little tip, but when people say kind things via text or Instagram DM, whatever it is, and I have a chance to have it in writing, I screenshot it and I put it in an album saved on my drive called The Good Shit.
Okay.
I almost said, am I allowed to swear on this? It's my podcast.
I was going to ask that before, and I think I accidentally swore before, but I'm not sure.
It's all good.
That's okay. As long as this isn't like the time when I was talking to a bunch of kids. That's a story for another day.
But I think we need to hold on to those moments because I literally have had dark moments and I've looked back at that file and there are texts from you. There are texts from people that didn't know they were making my day, and it helps. So I'm just saying, I'm not saying everyone should do that. I'm saying find what that is for you and do that.
It's nice to know that doing something minimal, and let's face it, sending a text message is very easy.
Yeah.
Can make a difference in a day. There's a few friends of mine that every day, even if we don't have detailed conversations, every single day we'll send a text with some sort of a contact. Yeah. And they're always positive. They're pictures of the Blues Brothers. There's jokes about cats, whatever it is. Yeah.
One of my friends said her love language is meme sharing. And she's like, you don't need to use words, just send me memes and we're good.
That'd be fun to communicate with only memes.
Yeah.
It'd be hard to have an argument.
Well, we're trying to stay away from arguments.
That's true.
Even though you can grow from them.
Maybe that's how we could avoid arguments completely, is everyone in the world could just communicate by memes.
Yeah. Well, I want to take a moment to share my little, I haven't named this segment because it didn't just come to me, but the thing that I want to put out and share with everyone is my best friend Corinne is on the board of a charity called DKMS. It's an international nonprofit organization, and it's dedicated to the fight against blood cancer and blood disorders. All you do is you go to the website dkms.org to check your eligibility and request a simple swab kit, and it's free. And there's potential that you could be a bone marrow donor for someone. And I think her work is so inspirational. And I just wanted to kind of shout her out because she's been so helpful in every aspect of my life, as all friends are. But I think this is a great, organization. And I am definitely too scared to ever donate bone marrow because I have a really low pain tolerance. My chiropractor told me I will definitely have to get an epidural if I give birth. That really freaked me out because if she gives me a massage, I freak out. So I'm just saying I can't do this, and I know my limits, and I think that's okay, because if I did the cheek swab and I was a potential match and then I backed out, that would be worse. But if you are out there and you think like you would be able to give bone marrow and like save a life and put yourself before someone else, which is something I can't do in terms of my pain tolerance, I think you should do it. So dkms.org. Gregory,
Jacqueline,
this was wonderful.
Thank you.
You have made my day, my week, and so many memories. So thank you very much for being here.
I appreciate all the kind words as always.
And where can people follow your work?
If you go to ProfessorMopTop.com, it's a good way to start. You can see a little bit about my history and check out the personal website. Most of the stuff I do stays on Facebook these days. As hard as I try, just don't do Twitter as much as I can.
Yeah.
And Facebook is definitely the best way to communicate, find out which libraries I'll hopefully be doing in-person classes, hopefully by the end of the summer. As of now, there's a few virtual classes via Zoom that I've been doing, and those are fun as well. There's something different about them.
Yeah.
But they're still fun. It is nice to get together and escape and enjoy something, silly like the White Album, something that people bond over. So go to Professor Moptop on Facebook. That's your best bet.
Well, Gregory, thank you for being here. And I want to say thank you, everyone, for listening. You can follow the show at Pop of Passion on Twitter and Instagram, and at Pop of Passion on Facebook. And go out and be the light.